Hi there, so glad that you can join us for the first ever grill. It is an hour-long Google Plus hangout with me, Gina Miller, and the one and the only Evan Grant. It's so cold outside, we had to grill up something inside, didn't we, Evan?
Yes, we did, Gina, and I am glad to not be outside.
Aren't you?
Yes, I'm very much glad. Even with my layers of extra fat, it's a little bit uncomfortable.
Well, it's pretty comfortable where we are. We are at Neighborhood Services Tavern at Village on the Parkway in Addison. We hope to show you some fun things they have going on here, but this is what the grill is all about. We talk baseball, we talk food, we may talk a little bit of booze. I may even drink some booze. And we also hit sort of the cultural zeitgeist of Dallas-Fort Worth sports and beyond. We'll talk Cowboys, Packers, the college football playoff, and the news about one Texas A&M quarterback potentially coming home, Evan. But when it comes to you got to talk baseball.
We got to talk baseball. But, you know, what's even more near and dear to my heart than baseball is food. And we are at Neighborhood Services Tavern, the newest location of what everybody knows that since I'm such a publicity hound for this place, that it is my favorite restaurant in Dallas. It's where I proposed to my wife. It's where we had our rehearsal dinner. This is the newest location. It is it's a great spot. I'm actually coming here for dinner tonight. So,
rub it in. Hashtag humble brag.
Yes, humble brag. My wallet will be hurt, but nonetheless, no, my wallet will not be hurt all that bad because it's another thing is prices are affordable.
Yes, they are. I'll tell you, when Evan walked in here, literally, they laid down the rose petals like they did in Coming to America. They're like, Evan, you're here. We've been waiting for you. You walk in, the C parts.
I did not see rose petals. But they like me.
They do. They do. Evan is connected.
They do lay out rose petals for my wife.
That's true. That's true. Evan is well connected, and he's pretty smart when it comes to Gina's. He likes to keep Gina's in his life. All the time, his wife's name is Gina, in case you guys didn't know that. So here's what a Google Plus Hangout is all about. I know a lot of you have done these before, but we'll just give you a little bit of a refresher here. This is an interactive 60-minute broadcast. You help be a part of the show. You can join the conversation by tweeting us at Evan_P_Grant or tweet me at the Gina Miller. But the cool thing is that on these Google Plus Hangouts, there's an app that allows you to join the conversation and have your question selected and answered during the course of our broadcast. Anything goes. We're game for anything. We've already got some good questions coming in on Facebook. We hope to answer some of your questions that you submit to us right here during the course of our broadcast. Now, you'll see me looking around a little bit. You'll see Evan looking around a little bit. It's not because we don't love you, which we do. We love you.
No, it's just my ADD.
I think we all have ADD. That's because we're both checking Twitter to monitor your questions, and we're also checking the Q&A app. I'm also going to be doing some housekeeping to share some graphics with you over the course of our broadcast. So jump in, chime in, give us any feedback that you like. Feel free to ask us anything, but just be careful because we're going to speak the truth.
I always speak the truth. But what is most important to me about this whole project is the idea of this is a Ranger fan-driven product. It gives us an opportunity, gives me an opportunity to speak directly with them and to answer questions directly from Rangers fans. So we want to tailor something that is going to work best for their needs, whether it's video, audio, whatever it is. Want to be able to answer questions directly, want to be able to have some fun and maybe inform a little bit.
So let's jump right into that Texas Rangers discussion because there were so many big stories about this team at the end of last season and then, of course, the off season. Ron Washington, perhaps the biggest story at the end of last season. We'll get into that in just a moment. The biggest story of the off season, though, the new guy, the new man in charge, Jeff Bannister, the new Rangers manager. And I think a lot of us are still trying to just figure out what this guy is all about.
I think because he just hasn't been out in front of the public quite as much as you would normally get, it's difficult to get a feel. It's typical of any new manager, but I do think what I've gotten from Jeff Bannister in the time I've been around him, in talking with people in the Pittsburgh organization who knew him, there is, in my mind, the words that come to mind are earnestness. That you can see that he is, when he's talking to you, he is trying to answer your question. He's not simply talking in sound bites, trying to answer questions. A lot of people described it as an intensity in the way he talks. And I think that's going to play really well in Texas. The guy is a Texan. He talks like a Texan. He uses Texas words. He said that when he got settled here in Dallas-Fort Worth, the two things he needed to find first were a barbecue spot and a Mexican spot. So obviously the guy is a native. Of course he asked.
Of course.
And we're working on that based on wherever his final residence ends up being. But when he talks about players, he talks about men. He doesn't talk about guys. He doesn't talk about players. He uses the phrase men. And I think that's going to play well with Ranger fan sensibilities, because what he's trying to instill is that he's armed and that they are going to be treated that way and they're going to be expected to perform that way.
Two things that you mentioned that I think are interesting. One, he wasn't a guy that you heard a lot about, unlike maybe perhaps a Clint Hurdle when he was with the Texas Rangers. He was an assistant that you heard a lot about. But Bannister also strikes me as a loyal guy with the Pittsburgh organization forever, basically. And he's the son of a coach, son of a football coach. So he's a guy that was almost meant to do this.
Well, and I think that, yeah, I mean, the loyalty aspect, 29 years with the Pittsburgh organization, it's kind of unheard of for a guy to do that and then go and work in another organization. But this is a guy who has waited his time and has put himself in the absolute right spot. And getting to a place with Pittsburgh where he was a candidate for that managerial spot when Clint Hurdle got the job. And Clint was so impressed. And Clint thought, hey, this is a guy who needs to be working with our players at this level, that he made him his bench coach. And this is something that Jeff Bannister, for lack of a better term, is paying forward with the Rangers, in that when he sat down during his interview, the first thing that was asked when he was asked about his prospective coaching staff, his response to John Daniels and the people in the interview room was, I'll answer that with a question, which is, who in your organization needs to be in the big leagues? Who is ready for that kind of responsibility? And that's, I think, a large part of why you have guys like Steve Michelle now on the coaching staff, why you promoted from within with James Tingler being part of the coaching staff. This is going to be an organization from the ground up that is grown, both players and I think development staff and coaching staff that's going to be grown in-house.
You mentioned the communication aspect of Jeff Bannister and how he goes about doing that, referring to his players as men, and the intensity it sometimes he seems to present, that almost, intense form of communicating, if you will. And this is a two-pronged question. What will his communication thoughts and processes be like when it comes to the players and with John Daniels and the Rangers front office?
Well, I think one thing that John Daniels was searching for in this managerial job, because quite frankly, it would have been easy to give the job to Tim Bogart. I think Tim Bogart was qualified. I think Tim Bogart did a great job in the 3 weeks that he had the job. One of the things that John Daniels was looking for was somebody who is a partner. And you can't just say based on performance that we're partners. You've got to have that relationship.
It's got to feel good.
That's a great,
yeah. Feel good.
And going through the whole process, when I talked to Clint Hurdle during the managerial interview process, and I got from him the ideals that he had brought to the Pittsburgh organization, the whole idea of a leadership committee based on of players who would be forced to go into the manager's office and be forced to talk and give their thoughts about what's going on with the club. And when I say forced, it's difficult when you're in a macho sport to actually get guys to sit down and talk about feelings. And be honest. And Clint said it was awkward initially. But those kinds of things, the idea that, hey, we're going to bring our coaching staff in once a week and sit them down and have guys give me three things I've done well this week, 3 things I've done poorly this week, and grade me. We're going to have feedback from the coaches to me as the manager so that I know where I'm hitting the mark, where there are things that I'm assuming that aren't right, and what needs to be addressed. And when I heard all of that from Clint, I was relatively swung over to thinking that whatever took place, if Jeff Bannister could kind of convince John Daniels that he had those same qualities in him, he was going to be the guy who ended up as the Texas Rangers manager. And now it's going to be a process of instilling all that and bringing that to life. And one thing I do caution any reader, any fan that I talk to is, hey, there's a lot of ideals here that John Daniels has about inclusiveness, that Jeff Bannister has about inclusiveness, and everybody wants an organization to be inclusive. Everybody wants an organization to work with a great symbiotic relationship, and it never fully develops, okay? What you try and do is improve gradually a little bit each year, and I think the Rangers have gotten to a point where in 2011, 2012, their major league team had become an entity almost on its own and was operating kind of on an island from the front office, from player development. And now, after taking a step down, being knocked down a peg, they're having to say, okay, what did we need to do better? And part of that is growing again as an organization.
It's amazing how getting knocked on your butt will change your perspective about things, isn't it? I'm not just talking about baseball. You mentioned communication, and that communication and the potential disconnect there may have been outside of that Rangers clubhouse. The Rangers have enlisted the services of one Michael Young, former number 10. He's going to be the liaison between the players and management. So is Michael going to basically hang out in the clubhouse and say, this is what you need to do? And let me phrase it by this. One thing I loved about Michael Young, and I've mentioned this to you, and I've mentioned this before when I was on the air, is that one time he came to me when I first started covering the Rangers doing the pre and post game shows, and he said, look, if you have any questions about this team, stupid, dumb, good, bad, ask me. I will address them. I will answer whatever it is you need to ask. And I wish every team in Dallas had one guy that did that. Will he do that for the team now?
No, I don't think so. I think when he played here, he was the liaison between Ron Washington and the clubhouse. And I think he served as kind of that layer of insulation where Wash could kind of sit back and be a guy full of energy, full of enthusiasm. And when he spoke and he got on a roll, whoever you were, you wanted to buy into what he was saying. But there was policing of players that needed to be done. And it's always best when it's done by a contemporary, by a peer. Michael understood that responsibility and took it on. His new role now, I think the big step in his new role is that John Daniels and Thad Levine have gotten to a place where they understand that they need a player's perspective, that they have a lot of strengths as evaluators, they have a lot of strengths as negotiators, in putting together an organization. Neither one of those guys played professionally, and quite frankly, most of the guys at the top of the front office were not players. And so when you bring a Michael Young, and I don't want to sell Darren Oliver short on this front either, because Darren is part of this mix. You bring those guys who had between them about 35 years of major league experience, who pitched and played at the highest levels. You bring that into the mix when it comes to evaluating, when it comes to, hey, this is the message I want to send to a player in the clubhouse. Let me run this by you. How is that going to play? Michael can give some feedback then to John Daniels so that you don't have the situations that may have taken place in the past that were the disconnect between JD and Michael Young, that were disconnects between the front office and some other players. And I think that you are going to have a much cleaner line of communication and a much more transparent. I think the key word that I will look for within everything the Rangers do going forward here is I think there's going to be a level of transparency in how things are communicated. It will be communicated directly between manager and player, between front office and manager, and I think there will be give and take. And that is one thing the Rangers, I think, had gotten to a place in the last 2 years where they just was a little, I don't want to say disconnect, but I think that it had fallen apart.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot of intangibles: communication, feelings, grown men sharing their feelings. Every married woman in America says that doesn't exist, but Evan's here to tell you that's not the case. But let's talk.
I know about feelings.
But let's talk about some tangibles, some statistics, because it seems like this organization is going to embrace the analytics role and the importance and what that can do for a franchise. Now, the importance and debating that is for another day. We're here to discuss right now the fact that Bannister is interested in using this to its fullest benefit. Yes,
he's interested in using it to its fullest benefit to create an advantage. He's not interested in managing as a robot. He's not interested in taking the human element out of the game. But he is interested in being able to say to a pitcher, this is why when guys say we need to pitch inside, here's the benefit. Here's what happens when you pitch inside with a first pitch strike. Here's what happens when you miss inside with a first pitch strike. Here's what happens later on in the bat. And the idea now is players, just as the rest of us have more data at our disposal and we can look things up on our own, players too come from a background now where they have more knowledge.
Right. They've grown up in a different era as well. Exactly.
And they want, if you're going to discuss that with a player, if you're going to discuss a move or why you're moving him in the lineup or why you're playing another player today, they want an explanation that's got real reasoning behind it. And I think that's something that Jeff will bring to the mix this season.
We talked about what Jeff will bring to the mix in terms of embracing the analytics. We know that was something that Ron Washington may have not been so quick to adopt, but there are a lot of things he could adopt, and in turn, the entire Ranger Nation adopted Ron Washington in a way that I haven't seen with any sort of a coach or manager in Dallas-Fort Worth for a long time. The way he left was so bizarre, so unexpected if you were not around the team on a daily basis. The entire story surrounding Ron Washington's departure last year was just shocking on every level. But before we get to that and how he will be remembered, I mean, just what he did for this organization. I mean, won't he be considered one of the, if not the greatest manager?
Well, statistically speaking, he is.
Right.
He's the only manager to take this to win a playoff game or to win a playoff series. He's the only manager to take this team to the World Series. He has the most wins in Rangers history, most games managed in Rangers history, best winning percentage in Rangers history. All of that suggests Ron Washington, if he is retired, he should be in the Rangers Hall of Fame within 2 years.
Right.
That's basically the waiting period. The question, though, is politically and perception-wise, is it too much of a hot potato based on all of the unknowns over how Ron Washington left the club? What will be the ultimate legacy of Ron Washington's time in Texas? I think that this was the right guy for the right time. I think the organization and I think the game has changed a little bit again. It's come back to more of an, I think the analytics aspect has increased, and I think that you have to embrace that. And I think that it's gotten to a point again where you've got to kind of go back to your grassroots of, we're going to involve everybody in pulling towards one goal.
We're talking about Ron Washington and the former Rangers manager, personally speaking. I mean, and I look at this from a cynical point of view because I've been around professional athletes and sports for so long. He just came out of the closet about whatever may have happened. I mean, I'm being honest here. I mean, you want to say he just got caught, however you want to do it. That's the reason he left. Fair or not, who knows? But do you think he would have been here this year had that news not surfaced?
Oh, yeah. I think he would have been back. He would have gone into the season on the last year of his contract. And if the Rangers had gotten off to a poor start, which is entirely possible given the number of questions that this club has going into 2015, the Rangers would have then had to make a decision about potentially letting him go. And in that way, and this is the hard evaluation, bloodless comment, he did the Rangers a favor by leaving when he did. Because in all likelihood, if this team was below 500 at the end of May, they probably would have been looking at making a change. Now they've made all those changes and they've kind of gotten ahead of the curve.
Well, a phrase that I've been the phrase that I've adopted lately is called moving on. And we're going to move on from relishing the past of Ron Washington. But before we do that, I do want to get your favorite Wash memory because there's so many of them. If you ever had the chance to meet Wash, I mean, there are few personalities who are more engaging than this guy when he's on.
I don't see. That's the thing. I don't have a specific Wash memory or a snapshot in my mind, but there were times when you could sit down one-on-one with him and talk and ask him stuff about baseball and his beliefs and the way he communicated things were so strong and so passionate. They were sermon-like, that you walked out of that conversation feeling energized. And so I can see how that played with players. I can see how that worked well for a club that in 2007, 2008 really needed to be lifted up from an era of dysfunction. And it served a real purpose there. And it got guys energized to go out and play. And so that's the memory that I have of him. I don't care about the waving of runners from home. I don't care about the hugs of Jackie Moore. I don't even care about, I think the warmest thing for me was watching him go to the mound and smack Eric Holland on the cheek in the World Series, because there was so much at stake at that point in time. If there's one image in my mind that sticks out, it's probably that. But this was a guy who helped elevate the franchise. And that should never be forgotten. He played a key role in elevating this franchise. It's unfortunate the way this has ended, but I think now the Rangers are looking for a new voice, and that new voice is the right guy for the right moment in the way he's going to live on.
I have so many Wash memories. I did an interview with him every Friday for the Rangers pre- and post-game show on TXA 21. And many Fridays we would sit in the dugout, we'd sit on the bench, and we'd kind of shoot the breeze for about 5-10 minutes, however long he felt like he wanted to talk, because he had work he had to do, obviously. And we would talk about baseball. I was pregnant at the time. We would talk about that. I had my kid. We talked about everything. New Orleans. I love New Orleans. I just loved how real he was. And every guy is a real guy, but he was real. And he was so good at, like you said, explaining baseball, getting you fired up about the game. But then he was just as passionate when he was talking about New Orleans and how much he loved his hometown.
People use the word real. For me, the word that I would use more is unapologetic. I think he was this is who I am.
Yeah.
You take me as I am. I've got energy. I've got flaws. I may drop F-bombs left and right.
Yep.
I may, not use words that you would like, but this is who I am. And because of that, people said, you're tangible. We can reach out and touch you. And obviously, success of the organization plays a huge role in that. But that's, I think, what endeared so many people to Ron Washington is he was who he was.
He was human. Very much.
Yeah, and in a lot of ways, as ugly as it kind of sounds, it's almost appropriate that the way he left this organization was with a human moment.
Right.
You hate to see that happen. You hate it on so many levels. But again, here's this guy, 2010 in spring training. He's got to sit down in front of the club and say, I was caught using drugs last year.
Right.
And last year, when he walked away from the club, he basically had to come out and say, guys, I was caught, in a bad moment. And that, for me, while it tarnishes his time in Texas, it does remind you this is a guy who is just like us, who has flaws and who has faults. And one thing I always try and tell my colleagues, because I think you know this, is we in the business, we talk about this guy's a good guy, this guy's a bad guy. And it's all based on exactly. And it's all based on who gives you a funny quote,
who's nice to you. Yeah.
And we don't know these guys, good or
bad.
Right.
For
we
the most part,
enjoy working closely with some guys
You're
more than others. I enjoyed my time around Juan Washington. I would never sit here and label him as a bad guy, despite that, there's going to be some people who have righteous indignation about things that took place. This was a man who was real, who had flaws, who accepted his flaws, who was unapologetic about the fact that he was going to live his life as he did. And that's what it comes to. When people say real, that's what real is.
One time at the Texas Rangers Christmas luncheon, he told me that he had no fear of losing a job because he knows he's talented and will find another one.
And this is, and talking with one of my colleagues, Kevin Sherrington, we have talked about this. And one thing that always kind of was weird to both of us is you talk to a lot of managers and they'd say, and if they said that, they'd say, well, I have no fear about losing my job. But Wash was always like content to go back to being a third
He
base
was.
coach.
I got that too. Yeah.
You know, Buck Showalter would never say, I'll just go back to being a minor league instructor somewhere. I don't know why Wash always was willing to. I think when you get down to it, the bottom line was he enjoyed being out of the spotlight, being able to teach as an infield instructor, and being able to be as enthusiastic as he wanted without having the daily responsibilities of having to answer insipid questions from us in the media about how many pitches did X pitcher throw on rehab last night, and what's your rotation a week from tomorrow, and what are you going to do on a Sunday day game after? He did not want to deal with that. He wanted to deal with, let's get out and play the game, and let me go work with Rudnett Odor today and spend an hour with him on ground balls. Let me go do that. That's what he wanted to do. So in the end, it's weird that he would kind of say, yeah, I'll go back and just be a third base coach somewhere. But that's who he was. That's who he wants to be, is an instructor and a guy who's more of a almost a teammate, more so than a man who's got to be considered a leader and a voice for the organization.
So we have relived the past a little bit. Time to look ahead to the future. The Texas Rangers in 2015. What will their starting rotation look like? Who is their lineup? What will that look like as well? Evan has his crystal ball. Is that the crystal ball right here? Or the ball? Which ball?
There's a lot of glare off of it, but it's not quite crystal.
It's some kind of ball.
It's empty too. There's a lot of emptiness.
No, not at all. Evan has it all figured out. He sent me a list of notes for the 2015 Texas Rangers organization that was like 8 pages long. No, I jest. But he has really thought about, first and foremost, what the Rangers starting rotation will look like. And before we get into specifics, I mean, key there, isn't it just strengthening the rotation overall and getting those guys healthy?
Yeah, I think the health issue is obviously Fielder and Chu on the offensive side, and the rotation simply needs more healthy bodies going forward. I think last year this club got burned by expecting guys to bounce back from injuries and found itself a little bit thin. Certainly the injuries were off the charts in terms of numbers, but they just kept finding themselves a little bit short. And so I think one thing that they're trying to look for this year is, though they haven't made a whole lot of big name acquisitions, I think this club is still looking for another starting pitching candidate. I think you have got to, in modern times, in this age of baseball, you have got to go to camp thinking we've got an 8 or 9 man pitching pool of starters, and I think the Rangers will have that. And now, are they all high profile names?
No.
Are there questions?
Some you'll need some pronouncers on them.
Yeah, there's some guys that you're going to have to say, we'll have to wait and see, but they've got a pool. And what last year did was it exposed a number of guys that we're going to talk about to the major leagues and got them really necessary innings that they needed to be in a position to potentially step into the rotation in a full-time job this year.
Well, the first guy we're going to talk about, you guys all know who it is. It is a man who needs no introduction. He just goes by one word, you.
Yes, and all that really matters at this point, I think, with you, Darvish, is whether he's healthy. And everything has, to this point in time, been very positive. Since he was shut down, the Rangers were exceptionally cautious. I think a lot of that was driven last year by the fact that they had so many bad experiences with pitching injuries over the course of the season that when Darvish showed up with a little bit of elbow inflammation, they weren't going to take any chances. Everything seems to be ready to go. He should be 100% at the start of spring training. It's hard to even say, okay, this is what you, Darvish, has to do in 2015, because I think he's got all the tools. He is become committed to throwing his fastball as a weapon, and he did that much more while he was healthy last year than in the previous 2 seasons. He understands what his strength is, which is that wipeout slider, and he's efficient with it and has been able to kind of conserve it a little bit because of the fastball. And I think he's cut down his pitch counts slightly. The only thing I think that Yu has to do at this point in time is more immerse himself in the club. He is an ace, and guys are going to have to follow. And for the first 3 years, given the fact that his English was still something he was a little bit uncomfortable with, and that there was a throng of media covering just Yu Darvish.
And that's an understatement.
Yeah, I think that created some issues. Now that throng is going to be thinned out a considerable amount, and the responsibility for being the ace and for kind of helping these guys grow is going to fall. And if he does that, I think he's going to make the other pitchers better. I think he's going to earn more respect beyond just his abilities inside the clubhouse. And I think it's going to make him a more well-rounded pitcher all the way around. I just think it's a growing, it's a maturation type of process.
Speaking of maturation, you can certainly make the case that Derek Holland has matured in front of our eyes. He survived the earthquakes in North Texas that plagued our area earlier in the week, falling down in the shower in his Irving home. He survived that. He says he's healthy again. I've seen him out. Looks great. Will he survive 2015?
Listen, I could not have been more impressed with the way Derek came back last September and pitched. As frustrating as it was for him to be out all last year, his September numbers and the purpose with which he pitched last year indicate to me this is a guy who, is he going to do goofy stuff? Sure, he's going to.
That's who he is.
Are there going to be times on Twitter when you kind of groan and say, "Oh, Derek"? There's going to be times like that. But I think as a pitcher, he has turned a corner. I think he is really ready to take a step, take more of a leadership role, and as long as he manages to stay off the stairs at the same time as his dog Wrigley,
or out of the shower,
I think everything's good. I think if I read that tweet correctly, Wrigley was not in the shower with him at the time.
Okay.
That would have been my only concern. The other concern that I did have about that is I guess Derek did need to inform all of us that while he was in the shower, he was naked. To me,
Derek,
that might be a little bit TMI. Also, if he had not been naked in the shower, then I would have been concerned.
But see, no reason to be concerned because he showers naked just like the rest of us, I think. Moving on, let's talk about number 3 starter for the Texas Rangers, Colby Lewis. He's like a cat with 9 lives.
Yeah, the thing for me about Colby Lewis is I think if the Rangers had this season drawn up exactly as they would like, Colby would not be the number 3 starter.
Really?
He'd be the number 4 or number 5 guy. But right now, you've got a guy who is coming back off of a 170-inning season, has shown that he can return from really an uncharted medical history with that hip surgery, and they don't have anybody who's really proven in that role. So he's going to have to kind of take that on, and he will. And he is, as Mike Maddox said yesterday when we talked to him on the Fox Southwest show, Colby is a warrior, and guys follow him, and guys understand that this guy has the absolute perfect mentality for how you go about being a pitcher. You don't be fearful of a bad outcome. You be responsible about a bad outcome. You believe and trust your pitches, and you go out there with the idea that, look, I am going to pitch innings. That's my job. It's an easy thing for guys to follow, and I think it's going to be something that Rangers pitchers do follow.
He is truly a man who has no fear. He once told me, he said, hey, pack up your family, have a kid overseas, and move to a foreign country. This was when he was a pitcher in Japan. That is something to fear. He says, this baseball thing, I got this.
And do you realize that Colby Lewis is basically, he has pitched professionally since 1999.
Right.
Last year, he made $5 million. after bonuses. It's the most money that Colby Lewis has ever made as a pitcher. And this is a guy who has pitched 200 inning seasons for the Rangers, a big part of the rotation. He has had to fight for every dollar that he's earned as a big league pitcher, and he appreciates that. He appreciates the opportunity that's given to him. But again, this is when you start talking about the construction of the Rangers rotation. I'd love to have that innings eater at the number 4 spot rather than the number 3 spot. I would still rather have a real high upside guy in the number 3 spot. That's where I think the weakness in the rotation is right now. It's something that I still think this club could address come spring training. I think they may be in a position to make a deal in spring training if they feel like everybody's healthy. And if they feel like the Chu and Fielder are going to be able to drive the offense, this team may very well be in position to make a trade for a pitcher. And the pitchers that may be out there, a guy like a Cliff Lee in Philadelphia, he's got to go to spring training and prove to people that he's healthy again. So,
speaking of trades and moves, got a new guy coming in. Is your 4th starter?
Ross Detweiler is a left-hander. I think he's a hedge right now. I think that, he gives you an opportunity to go out there with a guy and get some innings from him. This is a guy who was effective 2 years ago as a starter. He's a left-hander, gets ground balls. All of that plays really well at Rangers Ballpark. Certainly, he's not the kind of guy that's going to light people up and say, "We've got another ace." but I think Detweiler can give the Rangers adequate innings. And if you look at the way this club is constructed in the pool of pitchers that we're talking about, you're hoping that you get Martin Perez back in July from Tommy John surgery. You're hoping that a prospect like an Alex Gonzalez, who might be ready at the start of the season, but should definitely be ready at mid-season, would be able to potentially step in the rotation. And you look at, if you are a contender come July, there's going to be pitching options out there for you to go out and acquire. So that I don't think the Rangers go into it looking at Ross Detweiler and say, we're going to count on 30 starts from you. You look at a lot of guys as, hey, this is a half-season type option. Ross Detweiler gives them that. If he gives them more than that, great.
Got a few more guys here. Let's run through these pretty quickly and just kind of hit some highlights of what intrigues you about each guy going into 2015.
Well, I think when you get into guys like Nick Tepesch, Nick Martinez, and even Salvatore Bonilla, you're talking about 3 guys last year who were thrown into the fire because of the injury. Neither Nick Martinez nor Luis Alberto Bonilla should have pitched in the major leagues last year, but because of the injuries, they were thrown into it. And Martinez got 140 major league innings last year. Incredible learning experience. And I do think he got better as the season went on. Nick Tepesch learned to trust his changeup, which was the necessary step he had to take. And again, this is a guy who racked up another 100 innings last year. Probably shouldn't have been in the majors in 2013 or 2014. 2015 should probably be when he makes his debut. But he's going into 2015 with 38 major league starts and over 200 innings of experience. That's a huge learning tool, and it's something you can build on. Bonilla hasn't had very much experience in the big leagues, and I think that this is a guy the Rangers initially looked at as more of a relief option. But again, they were so cut to the bone that they had to give him an opportunity, and he really responded well.
Real quickly, when I got your list, Evan, my first question was, what about Matt Harrison?
Well, and my feeling on Matt Harrison is this. If the Rangers learned anything from last year, it is when you've got guys coming back from injury, you cannot sit here and make expectations. Mm-hmm. I was asked on the Fox Southwest show last night, how many innings should the Rangers expect from Matt Harrison? And really, I don't think you can expect any innings from a guy coming back from spinal fusion.
Manage your expectations.
If he does come back, it's great. Yeah. I've talked to Matt in the last week. He's feeling good. He's thrown for the first time since the spinal fusion surgery. But look, this is a guy who's 240 plus pounds, and he had lumbar spinal fusion surgery. It's a load-bearing area. It's a lot of weight coming downhill. We don't know what we're going to see out of Matt Harrison. If he gives the Rangers 100 innings this year, my goodness, what a great story it is. It's on the same magnitude of Colby coming back from that hip surgery last year, and it potentially resuscitates his career.
Okay, I want to get to the Texas Rangers resolutions that Evan has made for certain players on the team, but real quickly, I'd like you to kind of just fly through your projected starting lineup.
Yeah, I think it's the interesting thing about the lineup, and I'll just hit on one thing right now, is obviously Sin-Chu Chu last year was more comfortable as the leadoff man than anywhere else, and his numbers historically have indicated that he's best suited as a leadoff man. But I think if you look at this team right now and the way the lineup is set up, the way the pool of talent that they have, it would be best served if Chu could hit 3 so that you could go Chu as a left-handed hitter, Beltre right-handed hitter in the 4 spot, and Fielder in the run-producing 5th spot. You have the ability for Chu to continue to get on base, Beltre and Fielder to drive runs in. For that to happen, Leonys Martin is going to have to continue to build on what he did last year. And I think that this is going to be a real conversation that Jeff Bannister has with Sin-Chu Chu to get an idea of whether or not he will be comfortable moving into the 3 spot. And it's also going to have to be something that he converses with Leonys Martin to get a sense of whether or not Leonys Martin is capable of doing the things that are necessary as a leadoff man. Look at the career of Leonys Martin, and the on-base percentage does not suggest leadoff guy type OBP. A 315 OBP has got to come up a little bit, but Leonys did make progress there last year, and his 325 OBP for the season was more effective. He also took nearly 40 walks. He's going to have to walk a little bit more, but not at the expense of. It's such a thin line, Gina, with guys. You want them to be aggressive and you want them to attack fastballs when they get fastballs, but they also have to go up there with an approach that they're going to swing at their pitch. That doesn't mean going up there, hey, I'm going to take 2 pitches and fall down 0-2 in the count, or that I'm going to wait to get a strike. It means going up there with an approach. You're looking for a pitch in a spot. That's where Leonys has to do a little bit of refining this year to really take the next step.
Okay, that's perhaps one of Leonys Martin's New Year's resolutions, things that you would like to see from him in 2015. I'm not sure if any Texas Rangers actually made resolutions. I know you did. I've got a few. We may get to those, but Evan, being the smart, intelligent, forward-thinking man that he is, always thinking of others, he has created...
Stop trying to flatter me, Gina.
I'm just waiting to get that food down there to see if they'll let us eat.
I'm taken.
That's true. By another Gina, no less. No. See, because he holds all the cards here. If I butter him up enough, we'll get fed well here. Anyway, New Year's resolutions for the Texas Rangers in 2015. But before we talk about the players' resolutions, because you are around this team every day, longer than you probably are around your wife, 10 to 12 hours a day at the ballpark or on the road with the team, what are your resolutions as it relates to the Texas Rangers?
I think the only resolution I can make is when it comes to coverage. And I think one thing that has to die with the end of 2014 and the end of this abysmal year for the Rangers is this perception out there of wanting to get the full story on the perceived power struggle between John Daniels and Nolan Ryan.
It's so sexy.
It's over with.
It's over with.
It's unfortunate that Nolan is no longer part of the organization. He did a great service for this club, helped reinstill integrity in terms of how this organization operated. I think he and John Daniels both did a great job. It's just unfortunate that it ended. But here's the thing, Gina. You look at the Arizona Diamondbacks right now, and they have a situation with Tony La Russa as I think his title is guru of baseball operations, and Dave Stewart, a former player, as the GM. That's one of those very undefined relationships there. And let's see if that produces 2 American League, two pennants in the last 6 years. The thing that I think people have overlooked time and time again is that Nolan and JD worked together for 6 years without a real strong definition of who reported to who a lot of times. They produced 4 90-win seasons in a row. They produced 2 American League championships, and quite frankly, this team should have been world champions in 2011. The story and the end of the chapter on that should be, it was a great chapter in Rangers history. that all good things are going to eventually evolve into another step. The Rangers have turned over their front office, their managerial situation, and the team over the last 2 years, and it's time to now look forward at that and how that will grow, how that will develop. And that's where my focus is going to be. I just feel unfortunate that for so long it's been dragged down to who did what to who. I don't think anybody did anything to anybody else, and I've maintained that for 2 years.
Yeah, people think there's fighting in the hallways at the ballpark and things of that nature. It's a sexy story. People love Nolan Ryan. It's just one of those things. Like I said earlier, we all got to move on, and that's what we are going to do here. You are watching The Grill, the first ever Grill Google Plus Hangout. We are live at Neighborhood Services Tavern at Village on the Parkway in Addison. We are talking New Year's resolutions for the Texas Rangers, members of the Rangers organization, and perhaps you, the fans, as well. If you have a resolution for the Rangers, for us, let us know via the Google Plus Q&A app. We have a couple of questions we're going to get to in just a few minutes. But before we do that, Evan, you have to share your New Year's resolutions for members of the Rangers organization and perhaps beyond.
Well, I think that for my resolutions for certain members of the Rangers, and these are all kind of off the top of my head,
as he has them written down.
I do have them written down, even though they're off the top of my head. Listen, for Elvis Andrus, I think the resolution has got to be, I'm going to work out more this year than I did last year. And I think he's done that. You know, the issue with Elvis in 2000, after the 2013 season, was that for the first time he didn't go and participate in winter ball, and he said, I'm going to rest. And he just rested and rested and rested. He came to camp about 15 pounds heavy, was sluggish. He dealt with a sore arm for a good part of spring training. It impacted his preparation, I think, for the season. On top of that, he was slower on the base pass, which led to less effectiveness as a base runner. And it just all kind of imploded into a poor season for Elvis. I've seen him since the end of the season. He very quickly dropped 10 pounds. I believe he has been participating in more workouts and has spent the bulk of the offseason here, has spent some time at the Boris Institute as a member of Scott Boris's client base. They've got access to a gym and workout facility in Miami, so he spent some time there. But I saw a picture that Elvis posted on Twitter just around the first of the year.
I can find that picture.
And, he looked a little bit he looks slimmer in the face. He looks like he has kept the weight off, and I think that this is a guy who is got to be, as you pull up a picture of him in
not this
flight
picture.
Mask, this is a guy who's got to be more serious, and I think he's going to be more serious about his game, and he's got to be, or otherwise, Elvis is at that kind of proverbial fork in the road in his career, whether or not he goes on to be a long time foundation type player, or whether he kind of fades into oblivion.
Well, he's certainly getting paid like a foundation type player. Let's look at these other resolutions very quickly.
All right, Sin Chu, I think that he needs to resolve not to take things so seriously. I think
really.
I think one thing that Chu did last year that ended up hurting him was as he signed this big contract with the Rangers, and he took it very seriously upon himself to be a contributor. And when he got dinged up a little bit early in the season, and then other players got dinged up, and things started to go wrong for the team, I think he really, I don't want to say stressed himself out, but I think he just did put an awful lot of pressure on himself to try and do more than he was capable. And it, along with the physical limitations that he had, dragged his season down to a place that made it look like the first year of that contract was a waste. I don't think that this is what we're going to see from Sin Chu. He spent the entire offseason here and has worked out. And I think that if he can just say, look, I'm going to do what I'm capable of doing, he's going to go back to being the guy that the Rangers thought they were getting going into 2014.
It seems like taking things less seriously and having maybe a little bit more fun is a theme here, at least for a couple more guys.
Well, For Adrian Beltre and Prince Fielder, I think that, the way I've worded this is I'm going to enjoy my time off more because these are two guys in their 30s. Fielder is coming back from a significant injury. Beltre is 35. I think these are guys who Ron Washington would often say to them, we'd like you to take a day off, and they would talk him out of being taken out of the lineup. I think that Jeff Bannister is not going to give them that wiggle room when it comes to taking time off.
Just be honest, you want this guy to take more days off.
Yes.
Yes. You knew I was going to get that in there.
I do. I think that if they do, they're going to be fresher later in the season.
Yeah.
And I think that they're going to keep their bodies fresh. And I think it's going to continue to bring the other guys into the mix. This is a team that's going to have to be kind of better than the sum of its parts. The Rangers are going to be an ensemble cast. They're going to have guys that have to pull their weight, do their job, and let the next guy on a totem pole kind of follow them up.
Okay, and then Adrian Beltre is going to have some more fun, but John Daniels, no more fun. The guy's got to make better decisions and be more decisive. I'm
not going to say better decisions.
Okay.
And when I say be more decisive, that's not to say that John's been indecisive.
Okay.
But here's where the Rangers are right now. They are in a position going into camp where they are going to look at their players and have to make a decision. Can we pull the trigger on a trade here or there in March that's going to make this team a contender? Or is this team a contender as we speak? Or do we need to wait until July? So there are three really key choices for him to make here in March. And I don't think he's had to make that kind of decision that late in an offseason in the past. And so he's going to have to determine which path are we going down. And so much of that depends on, again, as we've said over and over, health of guys going into spring training.
And then finally, the Rangers Nation does not escape your wish for New Year's resolutions.
Yeah, I just think that, unfortunately, sometimes people get wrapped up in 190 games in 2010, 190 games in 11, and 12, and 13. It doesn't happen year in and year out. It just doesn't happen. Winning championships is really difficult. So for Rangers Nation, I think that they've got to be I think they've got the resolve to be a little bit more patient. This team may be a contending team. Things may fall into place, but they're going to have to just kind of wait and see. They can't expect for a move in January or February to turn the tide of this team. Right now, this team is more than one player away as it sits. If Prince Fielder and Sinchuchu go to camp and are healthy, if Jurickson Profar, who's going to be able to start throwing once camp starts, if he's healthy, if all these pitchers get clean bills of health and move forward, there is the nucleus for a very good team and for what the Rangers expected to see in 2014.
Yeah, that success came so quickly, almost in an unexpected fashion, and then it built the following season. And again, just manage your expectations. It's like a rookie winning a title their very first year, his or her very first year. You expect that every year. It is hard to do. Success is hard at any level, but particularly at the major league level. Don't get too greedy.
No, you can't get too greedy. You want you want the team that you follow to win, but simply throwing money at free agents is not necessarily the right way to go about this. I think this team is in position to reposition itself. They have to wait and see how things are going to play out with these guys coming back from injuries, and to make sure that, hey, Fielder and Chu, in particular Fielder, that, hey, the neck surgery is going to solve all the issues, the lack of power. If that shows up, that's great, and they've got the big bat they need in the middle of the lineup. If Chu is healthy again this year and gets back on base, you've got the ability for them, Fielder and Beltre, to have the chance to drive in a lot of runs. Until that happens, you cannot look at this team and say it's ready to do that.
Well, I mentioned that we don't just talk baseball here on The Grill. We do, in fact, talk eats. We got to talk food here, Evan. We have about 5 minutes left here on The Grill, and the folks at Neighborhood Services Tavern have made us these gorgeous, I want to get this right here, These
are
the
brisket and chuck
Butcher's
meatballs. I know these all too well.
The Butcher's meatballs with Pont Reyes blue cheese and the original voodoo peppercorn sauce. Good. I know it's rude to eat on camera, but we're just going to go right away and eat on camera. Cheers.
These are fabulous. And you know, Nick
voodoo sauce.
Nick Badavinas, the chef here at Neighborhood Services.
His man crush, by the way. It's not Michael Young. Everyone thinks that you have a man crush on Michael Young. It's Nick.
Nick is definitely my man crush. But Nick very graciously donated a dinner for the Do It for Direct concert last year. And the dinner went for almost $5,000 because it was an opportunity to dine with Michael Young, Darren Oliver, John Daniels, Eric Nadell, Emily Jones, McCoy, and I tagged along. But and I know that people got their money's worth from that conversation, but Nick threw at them a 6-course dinner that started with some appetizers on these Butcher's meatballs with one of them, and they're just fabulous. They're not like, you know, with this voodoo peppercorn sauce. It's a little bit different than Parmesan meatballs.
You get at Costco, which there's nothing wrong with, but
they're just great.
I love them. Go ahead and take your bite. And it's the grill for a reason because we're going to wrap up the show. Evan and I, we're going to grill each other. I'm going to put him on the grill, fire it up, and get you to wait. Excuse me, Evan's having a foodgasm over here real quick. I promised food porn.
I bit off too much.
Oh, he did? Bit off too much? Bit off more than he could chew. Here are the meatballs right here. They're really good. If you guys have never tried this voodoo sauce, seriously, can I tell you, I have a friend who's pregnant. You've met her, Andrea. And I had dinner with her at the neighborhood services over off of Inwood. Lovers in Inwood. The original neighborhood services, the OG. And don't get in the way of a pregnant woman in food. I think you knew this when I was up in the press box cafeteria when I was pregnant with my daughter. She sat there. She ordered steak for dinner. She looked at the server and she said, "May I have some more voodoo sauce, please?" He brings her a little ramekin of voodoo sauce and she says to him, "Have you seen the belly? I need more voodoo sauce."
The voodoo sauce is the voodoo sauce is the peppercorn sauce. It works really well with just about anything. I love it with the steak frites that they serve here.
Yes.
But it also works with the shrimp. Forget it. All right.
Not that he knows. Okay, we're firing up the grill.
I've eaten my way through the entire menu.
We're firing up the grill right now here on the inaugural Grill Google Plus Hangout. And I think you guys know this. There's a football game this weekend. It's not in Dallas. The football game we care about, though. Granted, there's never any professional football technically in Dallas. It's in Arlington. The football game we care about is in Green Bay, Cowboys and Packers. The Cowboys are 6-point underdogs. The Cowboys have never won in Green Bay. Dallas is 4-2 against the Packers in the playoffs all time. Their own one in Green Bay, of course. That was in the Ice Bowl in 1967. Who's going to win on Sunday, Evan?
I want your take on this first. You are more the football expert than I am.
I think this team is pretty equally matched, and Evan brought this point up earlier that all 4 teams really in the NFC are pretty equally matched. I see Dallas and Green Bay being a good game on paper, and you look at what Green Bay has been able to do. They got last weekend off. Aaron Rodgers had time to rest the calf. Having said that, how equal they both are, I think the Cowboys are rolling. They've got that momentum. There's something to be said for momentum going into a playoff game. But I'm going with the Packers simply for the Green Bay factor. And in the Cowboys, they surprised me last Sunday against the Detroit Lions. They're playing so well. I want them to prove me wrong. Let me just put it that way. Prove me wrong. I'm still picking the Packers.
The Cowboys surprised me in the way they made adjustments defensively as that game transpired. That first quarter could not have gone worse for the Cowboys. For them to kind of steal themselves, get the offense kind of moving in the right direction, and at the same time for the adjustments that Marinelli and the defense put in, I think was very impressive. And that said, it's not a question of whether do you believe in these Cowboys or not. This is a different team than the Cowboys have run out there for a long time. There is a purpose to this team, but as I truly believe, the 4 NFC teams really are all playing very good football right now. I do think that you cannot discount the idea of a home field advantage at Lambeau, where the Packers are 8-0 or 8-0 this year.
Cowboys 8-0 on the road.
That is true. But when it comes to 8-0 at home versus 8-0 on the road, I'm probably going to favor the team that's actually playing at home.
Especially when home is Green Bay, where they never lose. Right. In the playoffs or when it's freezing.
Those fans are going to be serious.
Oh, yeah.
So
they started drinking today.
I think Kevin Sherrington and I both made predictions yesterday, and we both had 4-point margins with the Packers winning. And when it came time to actually tape the show, I think I took his score that time, and I went with 21-17. But my actual prediction was 24-20. I want to correct that. I just think that there's going to be that one drive where the Cowboys stall and don't get the touchdown that's going to make the difference.
This is going to be a low-scoring game, but these are two of the best offenses in football. So I think you're right around where the scoring standpoint is going to be. I like what you're saying, 24-20. I'm thinking out loud here. Okay, got to move on. There's a game also in Arlington. On Monday night, the college football playoff, the inaugural college football playoff, Ohio State and Oregon. I'm not going to lie. I'm like,
Well, as an SEC guy and as an SEC snob, I'm very disappointed that there's no SEC team here. And I'm not a big Ohio State guy. I've never been a big fan of the Big Ten. All these people who hate the SEC now because of SEC elitism, all of us who grew up in the 70s and 80s having to watch Big Ten elitism, we still have that hatred towards the Big Ten. But the bottom line is I think Oregon is the best team in the country and has been playing like the best team in the country for a longer period of time than Ohio State. Oregon showed me incredible speed in the Pac-12 championship game and in the semifinal. They beat the one team that beat them this year in Arizona in the Pac-12 game. And you look at, if you believe in this whole idea of bowl records of conferences determining anything, the Pac-12 has clearly been, and this hurts me to say, but the Pac-12 has clearly been the best conference in all of college football. So I'm taking Oregon, and I'm taking them fairly handily.
And just basically to quiet all those Ohio State bullies. Bully is a bad word. I shouldn't use that word. That's a bad way to characterize someone. There's so many Ohio State people in this market, media people who raise their big Buckeye everywhere. So go Oregon. Okay, go Ducks.
Hi, Steve Dennis.
I sat next to Steve Dennis for 8 years. 8 years. I had Brutus right here. I had a Brutus bobblehead. I had Buckeye necklaces.
Hi, Doc Taylor.
Yeah, exactly. Brian Custer used to work here. He's up in New York. We could go on and on. Finally,
the whole idea of the
Ohio State. Sorry, that was me throwing up. Finally, a bit of interesting story breaking today, kind of a few hours before we actually went on the air. Kenny Hill, the South Lake Carroll quarterback and son of former Major League Baseball player, I'm choking on a meatball, excuse me, help me here. former Ranger Kenny Hill, his son Ken the Trill Hill. Yeah.
The one guy who got a nickname after one game in college.
And that game against Alabama.
Yeah, he played really, really well. The bottom line here is...
You want some water?
No, I'm fine. I'm getting choked up about Kenny Hill.
Okay, here's the story. Kenny Hill has asked for his release, and I'm probably going to give it to him. He lost his starting job at Texas A&M to Kyle Allen, who performed very well in the bowl game.
And let's face it, Kyler Murray.
Yeah, exactly. Allen?
Kyler Murray.
Sorry, thank you. What did I say?
Kyle Allen.
Yes.
Kyle Allen finished out this year,
yes.
but Kyler Murray.
Yeah. You're exactly right. You're exactly right. They are moving on, and it looks like Kenny Hill is coming home.
It sounds like Kenny Hill is planning to transfer to TCU, and by the time he gets there, I believe Boykin will be. By the time he's eligible, because he's going to have to sit out a year, Boykin will be gone, and he won't have. It's not like he will be able to win that job on his own merits, and maybe that'll work out for him. I think things got very fast, very furious at Texas A&M, and maybe the right thing for Kenny Hill is to slow down, go to TCU, get into that program there, be closer to his dad, and hopefully not closer to Sean Salisbury and this mysterious story of Sean Salisbury becoming a life and quarterback coach for Kenny Hill. I don't think I would subscribe.
Don't get me started. This is a conversation when there are cocktails involved. Don't get me started on that. One question we are going to answer before we say goodbye here on the
Very serious question. Right?
Yeah, it is, of course. Bill Flanagan wants to know, since we're talking about food, have you ever eaten an entire boomstick?
I have never had a bite of a boomstick.
I don't believe that.
No, I haven't. Now, I will tell you this. Everybody knows Lana Berry on Twitter. And I did get her when she showed up at the ballpark because she's such a little person. And she's so petite. And she said she was going to eat an entire boomstick. And she showed up and I brought her a boomstick and she ate the whole thing.
No, she did not.
By herself, yes. Now, I don't think she felt well for the next 3 or 4 months.
Right.
But she did eat
her
it all.
tweets were off.
I have not, and quite frankly, I find, and I hate to say this because I love Rob Matwick, the Rangers president of business operations, and I love what the club does out there with concessions. I'm not big on these ginormous food dishes.
Idiocracy
I think
food.
it's just obnoxious. And I know more and more. I think the Packers are selling a 3.5-pound burger this weekend at Lambeau. I'm just not big on it. I think by the time you get to your seat with that hot dog, all of the cheese sauce is kind of congealed into kind of a glue. It's just not a good look. And so I'm just happy going to the ballpark, having just give me a regular sized hot dog. Give me, if we could get, and they've got Railhead Smokehouse out there, and they've got some barbecue, and they've got brisket. I think that's something that should be much more prevalent at ballpark in Arlington because it's Texas, it's barbecue. Sure. And so I'm all comfortable. Just give me my 4 or 5 ounces of chopped barbecue beef on a roll, and I'll be okay. I'll leave the 2 foot long hot dog to somebody else.
To people who are 90 pounds. Something tells me you might find a boomstick at your seat in the press box next year.
I don't think so. Nobody's going to indulge me that way, basically because people don't like me. But that's another episode of the grill in which we'll have my psychotherapist here with us.
Very good. So that just about does it from us here at Neighborhood Services Tavern in Addison. Evan, thank you very much for being a gamer, being a player.
I always love spending an afternoon.
I know, it's been fun. Most importantly, thank you so much for joining us. We had a great number of viewers on the grill here today. A couple of questions that we didn't get to. That just means we'll have to get to them next time. You can always keep in touch with us. Evan he's monitoring Twitter and Facebook as we speak. He is at Evan_P_Grant. I am at the Gina Miller. Please let us know what your thoughts were. Any feedback, good, bad, ugly, indifferent, we will take them. So until next time, stay tuned for our news about our next possible hangout and possibly a podcast that we'll be producing as well.
I hope so, and I really do want to emphasize, please give us your feedback. We're just experimenting here. This is something that is hopefully another opportunity and another platform for Rangers fans to get some information, have a little bit of fun, get a little bit of information, get a little bit of analysis, and one thing that I really like about this whole aspect is the ability to kind of promote and be at Dallas locally owned restaurants and bars. I've gotten to know people in this industry a little bit. These people work incredibly hard at what they do. They put great products out there, and it's great to be able to visit these places and see them thriving.
I got to tell you, I think eating is a sport. I think we've established that.
I have long maintained that dining in Dallas is a sport.
That is true.
It really is. I think dining is theater and sport in Dallas.
That is an entire discussion for another day because it truly is.
Yes, people want to get rid of me. They'll sit here and listen to you all day.
That's not true. People want to get rid of me. I know they want more Evan, but again, thank you so much. Thanks to Neighborhood Services. We look forward to hearing from you throughout the week. So until next time, talk to you soon.